Throughout this homebrew campaign course, I have stated over and over again that my favorite part of creating a homebrew campaign and running it is involving the players in the process. Letting the players have input in your homebrew world is an excellent way to showcase the strengths of tabletop role-playing games. If you're not really letting your players have much to do with the world and the story doesn't really change based on their input and feedback and their presence, then why are you doing that? Why not just write a book? When you're running a homebrew campaign, you have the opportunity to get all sorts of input and feedback from your players, and you're getting live feedback as opposed to when you write a book and you're probably not getting your feedback consistently. You probably don't even get feedback until after you finished your first draft and you have to go back and start over. When you're running a homebrew campaign, it is totally different, and I really love and appreciate that opportunity for live feedback and to change and adapt my story based on some things that the players do or what they think about the campaign so far. And today we are getting even more player input. I'm talking about writing character arcs. These are parts of the story that are dedicated to one or maybe two specific characters within the party. These story arcs are going to be based on the backstories that we get from the players and even some information that they might drop along the campaign. In this video, I'm going to talk about what a character arc is, why you should bother writing them, and then I'll give you some tips for not only writing the character arc, but running the character arc as well to make sure that it's successful and accomplishes its goals. So first of all, why should you even bother running a character arc? Most dungeon masters probably aren't really going to run character arcs. They're going to have a main campaign story and the characters are just present, but they're not going to have all that much influence on the story other than what their actions within that story have consequences for. So for example, if a character has some big backstory where their parents were murdered or something, they're probably not going to have all that much to do with the main plot, and the deaths of the parents really aren't going to serve as much more than a motivation for continuing the main story. Maybe the dungeon master just kind of loosely ties in that the murder of their parents has something to do with the main plot, which even that you probably aren't going to get from most dungeon masters. And that's perfectly fine. Some people just really enjoy Munchkin style games without a lot of roleplay or storytelling. It's just focused on killing monsters, looting dungeons, and upgrading your character until you hit level 20, retire, and start over again, which is fine. If that's what some people want to do for fun, that's excellent, but that's not really what we're talking about in this series. Instead, what we're talking about is storytelling and a narrative that is dynamic and adapts with the players and their character, and that is what a character arc really exemplifies. So you should bother with a character arc for a number of reasons. One, it is going to help you to develop the main character of that arc, which is crucial. Two, it can help draw some players out of their shells if they're a bit shy about role-playing or it's their first time playing. And three, it can engage those characters in the main campaign even more than they already were by your initial plot hook. You can use the character arc as an opportunity to tie some threads to that character and connect them even more deeply to the plot of your main campaign arc. This is an excellent opportunity to make sure that they are engaged, stay engaged, and understand why there is no one else but them who can do these things that they're doing right now. They have to participate in this main arc, and if it weren't for them, there's a good chance the party would fail in their ultimate goal. And doing a character arc for each of the characters in your party is a great way to make sure that each of the characters in your campaign are tied to this main arc in a way that really connects not only the party to each other, but to your story, and make sure that they are hooked and are hooked from beginning to end. I just want to touch on again that I find character arcs to be a great way to engage players and get some new players out of their shells. When you place them at center stage and everyone else takes a step back so that this one character can shine in this arc, you are pretty much forcing them into the limelight and giving them so many opportunities to explore their character and explore role-playing and just explore the game in general. You're also giving them lots of opportunities to shine as a character by setting things up so that they can succeed, and I'll get more into that a little bit later. In a previous video, specifically the one-shot video, which I will link up here, I talked about why filler arcs are terrible and you should just avoid them. They're terrible not just in campaigns, but in shows and even in books. Whatever medium that a story is consumed in, everybody can tell when a filler arc is happening and they don't really like it. You want to avoid that with the character arc, and you don't want the character arc to feel like it's filler. It needs to have something to do with the main campaign. Even if it's loosely tied to it, there needs to be a motivation for the players going to this other than just the DM wants you to go and pursue this arc. There needs to be a reason why it's happening. Essentially, what I'm saying here is make sure that this arc comes about very naturally. You don't want the arc to just come out of nowhere and blindside the players, although there's the opportunity for that too with things like kidnapping, which I also talked about in that one-shot video if you haven't already seen it. So there are opportunities for that, but really you want to make sure that it feels a lot more natural than just a sudden jarring change in the story itself. Maybe the party is heading to a town where they believe that they're going to thwart some of the plans of the big bad, and it turns out that there are people in that town who have something to do with one of the characters' backstories, or perhaps there are some bandits that one of the characters owes a debt to, and the bandits bandits find the character and kidnap that individual, start interrogating them or beating them up, and everybody else has to go and find them. And there's plenty of opportunity for backstory exploration within that arc. And even that last example can be pretty jarring. I would even suggest not doing something quite like that unless you really have to in order to get the party to participate in this particular character arc. I just want you to avoid railroading the party in a particular direction when that direction doesn't make much sense, and they're really just going to want to get out of that arc so they can get back to the main story. Make sure that this arc has enough to do with the main story to justify its existence, because yeah, character development is important and is a big deal and is a crucial part, in my opinion, of telling a narrative through tabletop roleplay. But when you're trying to tell a story like this and you suddenly force everyone into that pocket, it's almost like you're stopping the main story so you can forcibly develop one character. It doesn't feel good for anybody, and even that character is gonna kind of feel like they just want their story to be over so they can get back to what is really important. So just tie in the character arc to your main thread. It doesn't have to be this huge significant tie-in. Their father doesn't have to be the big bad at the end of the campaign, although that's perfectly fine as well if that's what you want. In the previous session, I talked about giving a puzzle piece. Character arcs are an excellent opportunity to give a significant puzzle piece. Give a big piece of the puzzle for your main campaign out in a character arc, and that character arc will not only be memorable and powerful, it will be impactful to the main story and will progress them forward and tie that character just a bit to the main campaign. It's a great opportunity for you to give some more information to your players. So how do you find the hook for your character arc? This is actually the easiest part in my opinion. In fact, this is probably the easiest sort of arc to find a hook for, because your players have already given you so much information that you can use to create a hook for the character arc. When we sent them that questionnaire in a much earlier video in this series, we asked them all sorts of questions that were really leading questions, trying to get them to give us information we could use for an arc later on. Go back and read through the backstories and responses that you got from your players and try to find a couple of questions that are unanswered. Maybe the character doesn't know who killed their parents, or their brother has been missing for a long time. Maybe somebody has been pursuing them, or there is a curse on their family, or they've done something in their past they're ashamed of and never want to be brought up. Find something in there that is an unanswered question or a plot thread that hasn't quite been tied up yet, and use the character arc to answer that question or tie up that plot thread. Now, these are my tips for running a character arc. When you run the character arc, it is important that you make sure that that character has the spotlight pretty much the entire time. Not saying that you need to just nix everyone else and they don't matter and they're all even just off the stage. They just need to take a step back. This is the main character's opportunity to shine. The main character of this arc, not your campaign. Your campaign's main character is the entire cast. But the main character of this arc, that person needs to shine throughout the entire arc. That means they need to do most of the talking and they need to perform most of the checks, or at least the checks need to cater toward them. For example, if you are running a campaign arc that is catered to a rogue, you'd want to have lots of opportunities for stealth and lockpicking, sneaking around, and general espionage, things like that. Just cater this arc to that character's skill sets, make them shine, show why that individual is useful to this party. This is also just a great way for you to help that player explore the skill sets of their character. Maybe the player just hasn't had the opportunity to do so, or they don't really understand the character so well because they came in late to the campaign, or they're a new player who hasn't really had this opportunity. This is a great way to almost use it as a tutorial of sorts if it's a new player and you're starting off pretty early in the campaign with this character arc. I really love using character arcs in this way, and it's also just a great tutorial for players when it comes to things like roleplay, because they have to engage with the story. The story is now totally about their character, and so the player has to be engaged and has to pay attention and has to participate in everything. They can't have their party members running around and doing everything for them. This is an excellent opportunity to make sure that the player understands how to be engaged, understands how to roleplay, and just understands the game in general. And that's my advice for creating a character arc. Honestly, character arcs are a lot of fun and they're really easy for me to write because most of the writing was already done by my players. When your players provide you with decent responses to your questionnaire that we talked about early in this series, you have so much fodder that you can use to create a compelling and fantastic character narrative focused exclusively on that player's character. I love character arcs. I love running them. My campaigns are generally built around them, and then I have one final act, and it's an excellent opportunity for players to learn and explore their characters and even just learn the game in general. Next week, I'm going to be talking about the tools that I recommend, and then after that, I'm giving some final tips and thoughts, and we will be done with my homebrew campaign series. Thank you for sticking with me through this series, and if you have not already, you can subscribe so that you see the next video pop up in your feed when it's released next Monday. Thank you again for checking out this video, and if you want to watch another one in this series, you can click up here. Until next time, bye.